Hello, and welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at ReCapping Podcast.
Also, rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We want to hear your thoughts on the movies and shows we review.
Leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or our YouTube channel, and we will read them during the show.
Or reach out to us on social media. We love talking all things entertainment and pop culture with you.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Well, good day, Ashley.
Good day, kind woman. What's up? I don't know how to speak that way, clearly.
I am super excited to do this recap. We are recapping Netflix historical drama, Queen Charlotte, A Bridgerton Story. It is 6 episodes rated MA. Here's a quick summary. The young queen's marriage to King George of England ushers in an epic love story and transforms high society. It has been, I don't even know what word to use. It has been just life-altering. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, but it is the number one most watched anything on Netflix. And this is as of June 8th of 2023. Actually, let's get into this cast. We have young Queen Charlotte, the star. She is absolutely a star. India Amir Tifo. Corey Marquise as young King George. Edwa Ando as Lady Agatha Danbury. We have Melissa Fairley as Princess Augusta. Ruth Gemmell as Lady Violet Bridgerton. Golda Rostavel as Queen Charlotte, Ursula Thomas as young Lady Agatha Danbury, Sam Clefmont as young Brinsley, Eddie Dennis as Reynolds, Hugh Sachs as Brimsley, Julia Andrews as Lady Whistledown, creator Shonda Rhimes and Julia Quinn, director for all 6 episodes, Tom Varkada. And we have Shonda Rhimes, Betsy Beards, and Tom again as producers. Rotten Tomatoes gave this series 94% critics, 72% audience, and Google users gave this series 94%. Ashley, what is your grade for Queen Charlotte?
It's an A. This series was heartbreaking, but superb. My favorite of the Bridgerton series thus far. It was what more than I could have expected in so many different ways. We touched on things in this series that we have not touched on. We delved into mental health. We delved into deepness that I was not expecting from the sexual and romantic nature that I had known Bridgerton to be before. So this one was deep, but it was good. So it's an A for me. What about for you?
I put A++++++. I loved it. And to your point, it was utterly heartbreaking. It was one of those things where it stuck with me after I watched it. Like, I just had to sit there and be like, whoa, that just happened. Beautifully written. The acting was superb. The costumes, the landscaping, the sets, all elaborate and gorgeous and very immersive. And it was a good time, Ashley. This series is currently on its 4-year consideration Emmy run right now in ahead of award season. So wishing the cast and crew much luck because y'all deserve. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our spoiler alert. I thought it was fascinating that we got a chance to have this particular prequel. We are introduced to Queen Charlotte in the Bridgerton series, and she is a flamboyant character. And what's fascinating is she doesn't even show up in the books. So it was a choice to have such a dynamic character be implemented into the television series. And so for her to get her own series, I thought, wow, what can they do with that? And boy, oh boy, they did something with that. Looking back at Bridgerton, we got to know Queen Charlotte for her fashion, which is dated, mind you, her sense of humor, her need to be entertained, and how protective she is to her husband, King George. Now, we'll talk more about this in our discussion of the show, but I didn't think there would be much to talk about because their relationship from Bridgerton World didn't really resonate much, right?
They weren't the focus either, so we didn't have a lot to go on yet.
Very true. In this series, we see a young Charlotte. I actually love the opening scenes of episode 1, Queen to Be. She doesn't even say a word, but she spies on her older brother, essentially signing her away to Great Britain to be queen and wife of the king. And we see her fire immediately when she tossed over that statue in house. What I love about the intro to young Queen Charlotte is her love for fashion was always there. Her in that monologue with Wilbone was quite entertaining. Her brother trying to convince her there's worse fates than marrying the King of England. Ashley, what's your first impressions of young Queen Charlotte?
She's definitely spirited, I guess is the best way to put it. She definitely has her own mind, her own opinions, which for me, I love, refreshing, but obviously of the era is problematic for the men in her life who would want her to be obedient
and controlled. Yeah.
But she's very quick. She's very smart. She seemed very strong. And I really liked that about her because she's 17 years old and is leaving the only home and family she's ever known and being sent away to a foreign country to marry a stranger. So you better have some strength to make it through.
Absolutely. When she arrives, she is inspected like a prized mare by Princess Augusta, who is the king's mother. She's already talked down to and told that her dress has to be changed to a traditional English dress. I find it interesting that they immediately talk about race. And one of the things that they did at the top of this episode is give disclaimers saying there were liberties taken by the author because there's strong speculation that the real Queen Charlotte was indeed of more descent and more were brown people, right? But Princess Augusta was like, oh my goodness, she's brown and she's the clear mouthpiece of the king. I found it interesting that they were like, okay, so if she's going to be the one he's going to marry, let's invite some brown people to the party.
It was also interesting because this had never been discussed in Bridgerton prior to this. So it was always like, oh, race isn't even a factor. The laws.
It was almost like quote unquote blind casting because I was under that assumption. And I've talked about this in the past, and this is a deep, deep cut, but Shonda Rhimes had a show called Starcross, which is like a continuation of a Romeo and Juliet story that only had one season on ABC. But that was, again, a quote unquote blind casting. So I feel like this is, something Shonda Rhimes had always wanted, and Bridgerton was, a success. But what are your thoughts about them actually talking to race and saying this is how this society got integrated?
I thought it was great because, again, to your point, I thought the same thing when we saw the first 2 seasons of Bridgerton, being that, oh, race just is not a factor in this world. But no, it's a product of the fact that Queen Charlotte helped to usher in the era of acceptability, no matter what your race or ethnicity may be. And having that history made her even more impactful as a character and as, you know, a product of that union between them. So I appreciated it because I was like, so now we're based more in reality than I thought that we had been in the previous iterations of Bridgerton.
You know, I follow this young lady on social media, and she told me that she felt like her love for Bridgerton was what happened if, yes, the end of slavery happened and Black people were immediately able to integrate without all the, rise of the Klan and things like that, what our society would look like. And that was something that she loved about the series. And I always thought that was an interesting take. But we talk about race in Queen Charlotte, and there's, throughout the series, we have the flashback to young Charlotte, and then we have present day with Lady Whistledown and the current Bridgerton Queen Charlotte and her family. And she has 13 children. And to me, there are not that many brown ones in the bunch, Ashley. Did you notice that?
Yeah, it was like one daughter and one
Yeah.
son, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice. I guess they're trying to show obviously Black women can make the spectrum, but it was an interesting casting choice for sure.
I that stood out to me. I'm like, for this conversation to be about race, and this isn't really a spoiler, but her children aren't necessarily major parts of the show. You would have thought that there might have been more melanin sprinkled in. That's my personal assumption. And since we're talking about present day, we see that all the antics from season 1 and 2, Queen Charlotte, of trying to get the diamond of the first water married off, she just needed to focus on home because none of her kids are married to, eligible blue blood, so to speak, or they don't have an heir, legitimate heirs to the throne.
Virgins to the left of me, whores to my right. I cannot get over that line.
Her interactions with her children, though, were hilarious, priceless. I am telling you, Ashley. And it's the question of, is the queen's knowledge to make a good marriage just talk? I thought that was a prudent question. But were you surprised on how distant she was to her children? She lost her grandchild, and all she could tell her son is sorrows, sorrows, prayers.
Coming from seeing the young Queen Charlotte, it did feel like a stark contrast. Like it seems like something had grown cold.
Yes.
Within her over the years. When we see her when she's young, she still has such a vibrancy, a warmth, a curiosity, a fire. And I know she still has fire when she's older, but it's like she's become so comfortable in this life, but not even just comfortable. She's lost some of that humanity, I guess is the best way to put it, when you see her now. And it's like, it takes a while to understand why that's the case. Could be the case, but it was a stark contrast for sure, because you're seeing the cuts between the two worlds, the two eras of time, rather.
Going back to young Queen Charlotte, in preparation for the wedding, as I mentioned, the princess invited the people from the other side of the tracks. And in that mix was Lord and Lady Danbury joining the society. Man, oh man, they did not make Lord Danbury worth his salt in this show.
I had to go look and see what the real actor looked like, because I was like, my God, when he took them teeth out.
Did they have to do him that dirty? Like, did he have to look that crusty?
Did they have to do her that dirty? I was like, damn, that's what you was sleeping under? That is upsetting.
Not only sleeping under, but then the way he would talk down to her when they showed up to the wedding, he's like, act like you've been somewhere before.
He was the son of royalty, so it does make sense that he would have that type of air about him. But he was a jerk. I mean, you already ugly, and this is your attitude?
Young Charlotte is missing, and she is willing to climb a wall. She has spent the day of her arrival trying to figure out, who is this King George? And no one is telling her. I'm not gonna lie, I would be terrified too if if people are only able to give me platitudes of the king, this person that you assume has such a prominent role in space, and all you can tell me is the normal, oh, his majesty the king of, whatever they pillaged and conquered or whatever through the centuries. It's like, to her point, she's like, is he a beast or a troll? She's like, I need to know. And as soon as she found someone to help her, she was like, make haste. It is none other King George himself. This interaction was lovely. What are your thoughts on this meet cute Ashley?
He knocked me off my feet with that first conversation. I'm not going to lie to you. He charmed the pants off of me. I was like, oh, this is what we're working with in this series. Okay, this is going to be good. He was everything. He was lovely. He was funny. He was charming. He was handsome. Yep. So I was like, oh, okay, girl, you're going to be all right. To your point, though, the secrecy, I still don't understand because her staff was never informed of anything. So I'm still not understanding where that secrecy came from other than just like manners and like, I guess, being mannerable and not spreading or speaking
and not
gossip.
Wanting to say anything ill of your king because nobody knows anybody, right? So it's like, how do I know you're a safe space to be like, oh, you know what I heard?
Yeah, I'm like, it has to just be that they are just being mannerable. Yeah. But yeah, that first interaction, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Like this love story is going to be everything. You know what I'm saying?
Said, you are incomparable. No one told me you were this beautiful, and call me George, just George. And I have to say, I was looking at him hard, like, is this smile sincere or what? You know what I mean? Because I wasn't sure. And he gave her the option to leave her go when her brother showed up. So to me, that also said a lot about him and his character, right? She was convinced and they got married. She ended up switching into her French outfit. So good for you, sis. And
pulling out the hair.
And the hair. And the hair. They make their way to their new home. And girl, this wedding night, talk about 180. When he told her, I have decided I'm your king. And she came back with, I thought you were just George. Wow. Were we bamboozled?
Yes, I felt bamboozled. I was so sad. I was like, again, he charmed the pants off of me. It seemed so sincere, seemed so romantic. They seemed so cute together. I was like, so is this about to turn abusive? Like, is what is really good? Is he just gonna cheat on her the whole time and has right. Like, what is really good with this person now? Felt like, oh, we got tricked. We all got tricked.
We did. Exactly.
And this is a Black woman.
Listen,
this is a Black woman in this role. Now it's personal now. It's personal, George.
You ain't gonna be out here screaming in my face like I'm anybody.
In front of staff and everything.
Yes. Episode 2, Honeymoon Blissed. Day after day, young Queen Charlotte gets dressed and spends the day by herself, Ashley. I mean, her outfits were fire. And I know she was probably like, I am presenting my best foot because I'm a married woman. I didn't have a wedding night, but at least something, right? He is nowhere to be found. No one's talking to her. She can't even socialize because she's supposed to be on her freaking honeymoon. When she finally gets a hold of him, he's in the observatory. And she was like, it would be better if he went to freaking brothels.
That I would understand, she said. But you choose the sky over me?
You choose the sky over me. And she's like, I don't know anyone but you. And another famous line that I loved, she's like, say something. And he's like, I don't want to fight. She's like, I want you to fight. Fight with me. Fight for me. This was so confusing as a viewer, Ashley. There's just so much privacy.
Frustrated. I was very frustrated. I couldn't understand it. We're only getting her perspective. So I just felt extremely frustrated. I felt her loneliness. I felt her anxiety. Yes. I felt all of the emotions that she was going through. It was so unexplained. That's what was getting to me.
Yes, because again, her interactions were so limited with him. It was like Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde, like, who's who at this point? Who's the real you?
And like, what's the point of all of this? Like, did you just get married out of obligation, but you wanted to go live a totally separate life? Like, why? What's really happening? Who are you? It's very frustrating. I felt extreme frustration, but also very little patience at this point. I was like, yo, y'all better figure this shit out before I turn this off. Like, I was getting mad.
And over at the palace, his mama is worried about if the marriage has been consummated. That was the big topic of conversation. It's necessary for the great experiment. Lady Danbury has been enlisted to be a member of Queen Charlotte's court. She's a double agent, Ashley. She is befriending the young queen who is lonely, but she's also the ears on the ground for the princess. My favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes between Lady Danbury and Queen Charlotte was the conversation of the marital act, Ashley, when she said, we are going to need drawing papers and coals. Because she was like, how was your wedding night? Oh, he was mean and rude and selfish. And she was like, did you consummate? And she was like, what does that mean?
I mean, you have to remember, this is a time where if no one told you, how would you ever know?
How would you ever know?
You don't have access to media. They barely want women to read. Like, what
the
would
books you have didn't have it in it.
Exactly. What would you have to go on? So very, very, very interesting.
She was like, how many times does it have to be inserted? And how long does it feel? And she was like, forever.
Poor Lady Danbury. And Lady Danbury is my favorite character from the previous Bridgerton series. So seeing what she went through in her marriage was very upsetting.
Girl, but it also told us so much of who she is today because she is such a independent woman.
Absolutely. A force. She's a force.
Some of the MVPs of the series would be Brinsley and Reynolds, who are the hands of the monarchy. They were pretty influential on the relationship between the two young monarchs. When Brinsley told Reynolds, like, hey, y'all need to give her a gesture or something because she is high and dry. And they gave her that dog that she called a deformed bunny. I laughed so hard at that.
Poor little Pomeranian, Pom Pom.
And it's so funny because it's like she's German, so she's thinking about all these big ass German dogs.
But thank God she asked for a gesture. She rescued that little dog. Little does she know.
And the fact, that's what I love about this series is they do such a great job showing us like the origin of the queen that we know now. She doesn't go anywhere without her little lap dog in the Bridgerton series. Her hair stays done with, you know, glamorous jewels. And I don't know if you picked up on this, but the way she speaks to herself, once we get to the loving part of the relationship, these are the things that he's told her through the years.
I did not take note of that, but that makes sense. It was funny when she was even talking to her daughters in one scene and she was like, dress yourself. Look at me. I'm fabulous. Like, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Exactly. George decides to stop by for dinner one night. At this point, we're still in the dark on why he was missing from day one in the first place. She told him about himself immediately. And that's one of the things that I do love about her character, because she's like, I know you're the king of England, but you have left me high and dry for days. And now you want to show up like nothing has ever happened. What did he think he was going to get out of her?
At this point, George was still a mystery. I'm like, why now? What has happened? Do you have split personalities? Like, bro, I need some answers. So I was with her. Like, I was with her. As long as we were in her perspective, I'm with you. Like, get out of here.
Absolutely.
I should throw something at your head.
He introduced her to his observatory. They see Venus. She says it's beautiful. He looks at her and says, it really is. He claims that it helps him stay humble, knowing that we're only small dust in the universe. I thought it was very sweet and endearing on how she said that she doesn't forgive him yet. Like, were you surprised that she still was open to him, even despite his absence?
Life is long. They're married. This is only the
Woo!
beginning.
Preach.
So no.
Preach. Well, they started over and they got a chance to consummate the marriage. One of my favorite lines is, I'm very good with buttons.
And also, I don't like the head hitting part. Are there ways to avoid that? Yes, there are ways to avoid that.
Oh my goodness. We thought we were on the good path, but guess what? Overhearing conversations can be very dangerous, Ashley, because the day after they made their connection, he was yelling at his mom saying, I did everything you told me to do. That's the last thing a woman wants to hear a man say after he got in those draws is, Mama, I did what you told me to do.
Yeah, that was a time to break a statue.
Girl. And present day in this episode, again, she is on a warpath to get her children married and having some legitimate heirs post haste. She even enlisted Viscountess Bridgerton for advice because she has had 2 weddings in 2 years. I think it's interesting when, Lady Bridgerton is like, oh, it's all about love. And Queen Charlotte was like, yeah, no, love ain't the problem. But then you get Lady Danbury's perspective of it's a painful lifelong duty. I was fascinated to have such 3 different opinions on life, love, and marriage at the same table. Do you lean towards one versus the other? I'm curious on your thoughts.
Ideally, we all hope to have what Bridgerton Mama is talking about and her children have been able to find, right? But she neglected the part that there was pressure on her children as well. It wasn't just like, oh, I met somebody and I fell in love. They were both being pressured as well to find matches.
Yes.
And find their person. So it wasn't just that simple. But that's obviously the hope for everybody. Lady Danbury is the saddest end of the spectrum.
Girl.
For sure. And then you have the queen, who the thing that makes the queen so lucky, though, is she did have a great match, ultimately, in terms of someone she could love. Yes, she didn't choose George, but it ended up being a love match for sure.
Absolutely. Episode 3, Even Days, Lord Ledger and his racist wife. This is Violet's parents. I think it's fascinating that her mom was one of the main mouthpieces that resisted the Great Experiment.
Thankfully, she had a great dad, because your mama is trash. Throw her away.
Exactly. We have the coronation, Ashley. They are officially crowned king and queen of all Britain. They don't like each other. I think it's interesting because we know why she doesn't like him, but I'm like, why doesn't he like her? I kind of reconcile within myself that it's like, if somebody's acting snarky to you, you don't want to be around them, right? So
it's like I give the energy I receive type
exactly.
Person.
One of my favorite lines about how she feels about her new king is, he's a lying liar who lies.
But that sex was bomb, though.
Even Days, Ashley. Oh my gosh.
The one scene where they still had staff in the room, I was like, yo,
exactly. Throwing stuff all on the floor. It was the chinning of it all for me, where he was like,
you want me to go? She said yes. I was just playing. Give me the D. I was just playing.
It's also the get in with the tub too. I'm like, don't even have time to take off your nightgown. Just get in. So Lady Danbury wants to have the first ball of the season. And of course, she's faced with some opposition because she's Black and people are awful. She calls out Queen Charlotte and she tells her that the palace walls are too high. You are not some simpering girl. You are a queen. What do you think about the relationship, Ashley, between these 2 women?
I'm thankful that Lady Danbury had wisdom and experience to impart and was not just there sucking, you know what I mean? Like being a taker. She was a giver and was exactly who and what Queen Charlotte needed in this time in her early life as a royal and in her relationship and in all those things. And love to see Black women supporting Black women, obviously. So I really enjoyed their relationship. I could tell that obviously as time has gone on and Queen Charlotte has gotten very comfortable in her role, that their dynamic has shifted. There's in the later years much more reverence and respect for the fact that this is the queen versus the way she kind of spoke to her when they were younger.
Yes.
But again, I think she was what she needed at that time.
I agree. With all the talks of the ball, Queen Charlotte was trying to get George to socialize, and she realized that he is, in fact, just Farmer George. He is not interested in socializing with his court, which is odd for her. And they are able to make a connection because she made it known she heard the statement of he has the happiness and misery of the country on his shoulders, and so they decided to be each other's person, which is kind of a callback from Grey's Anatomy. Shout out to Shonda Rhimes. All right, well, the Danburys were able to have a ball, and they not only had the first ball of the season, they had the royals present. This is the first time we saw Lord Ledger interact with Lady Danbury, and from the bat, he was like, I like you, let's be friends. I don't know if you peeped that.
Mm-hmm.
He also was the one to get people mingling because people weren't mingling at this party. And he asked her for a dance. I'm like, was he sweet on her that soon?
Well, I think it was probably such a stark contrast in thought and opinion and personality and character, morality. With I know it was a lot of things, but between him and his wife, and that was what that was to show, was that he did not have any of those racist reservations and opinions that his wife had. That was, I felt at that point, what that was showing rather.
Well, Lord Danbury was so excited for the success of the ball that he wanted to bed his wife, and he dropped dead in the process, girl. Wasn't that color purple? He fell dead on top of me. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes. That's been in a few things. That's been in a few things too. Like somebody died. I think that was in a Goldie Hawn movie as well, where somebody died during sex. Yeah. Running theme. But Lady Danbury was singing, can't you feel the brand new day? Seriously. Her and her one little staff member, her bestie, they knew what it was.
They really did. That night, the young monarchs went to bed together, and they were happy for this new age of integration. But Charlotte finds out very quickly about George madness. Were you surprised how quickly she went into action? He was like, there's Venus. She was like, no, I'm Venus. It's cold outside. Take this coat. I just was really impressed by it. Honestly, I don't know how I would act if something like that were to happen to me.
She's an impressive person. That's why I said, even from the jump, you could tell that she had a strength, even at her young age, that was needed, given the circumstances she was about to find herself in. But especially now, like, in that era, I can't imagine that there was any discussion about mental health, mental illness.
Nope.
Any possibility of having the knowledge, let alone the capacity of dealing with those types of things. So I think she just operated on instinct and out of love, which was beautiful to see. But then you see her immediately like, what the fuck is going on?
And why isn't anyone talking to me?
I have been bamboozled. Y'all ain't tell me what was really good before I married this man. Got it. Mystery solved.
Girl, who had the hardest job, Reynolds or Brinsley?
Ooh, that's a good question. Reynolds, because in my opinion, Brimsley at least got the relief of being with the queen, who was not going through the same levels of personal torture
okay,
that the king endures. The king went through a lot, so therefore Reynolds went through a lot.
Yeah. Let's talk about their relationship. So they had a situationship.
No, they had a relationship. Let's be real.
they did have a full-on relationship, but it was in secret because of the times, of course. But honestly, their jobs were so consuming. It's like they literally get in where they can fit in.
One of the most heartbreaking scenes is between older Queen Charlotte and older Brimsley.
Girl,
That
why
made
did
me
she
want to
even
cry.
ask him? Why did she even ask him? Did you ever marry? When did he have time?
That's our perspective. I think she genuinely had become so like self-involved or like enthralled with the things that she has going on that she, again, such a stark contrast from when she was young, right? Because when she was young, she
Yeah,
didn't even want Brimsley to be 5 paces behind her, right? You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
Exactly.
But that broke my heart because then she immediately like went back to a dismissive question to like
Yes.
avoid the reality of the conversation. And it broke my heart. Like Brimsley and Reynolds and anybody. And I thought about this so heavy. I was like, those positions, and at that time, I understand that it was about serving the crown, but they were slaves to a certain extent.
Right. Where was their free will? They were always on call. And the fact that Brimsley, going to the present day of their relationship, he's the only one that knows her from day one. And when he gave her the answer of like why her girls never married, he was like, if he had died, it would have hurt and you would have grieved, but you would have moved on. But instead, you are his queen forever, frozen and waiting.
Mm,
That was deep.
it was. And it hit her ass hard too, because she was like, go stand over there and don't look at me. Right. Like
He said,
your truth bomb was too truthful.
your daughters can't leave you trapped in time.
I think it's powerful too because I'm sure the queen thinks she has it together. I'm sure the queen thinks that she has been a great mom, has ruled well, has done all the things, but she doesn't know the impact and effect that George and that relationship has truly had on her. And it's heartbreaking to think that her daughters know her better than herself in that way. You know what I mean? They can see the toll
Exactly.
that marriage has
Exactly.
had on her that she's just been in denial about.
And that was always something that was talked about for season one and season two of Bridgerton, in particular, for the queen to be, dressed elaborately, but it was in the olden times, not in present day. And so to have this perspective of like she is frozen in time because it's like she wants to be that same girl that he knew when they were young. Whew.
Oh, that's so sad.
Episode 4, Holding the King. Again, she's like, what the hell is going on? And again, ride or die, sis is washing him, her naked ass husband who came out from outside in the dirt, washing him and looking for answers. We get a rewind moment. It kind of reminds me of Hamilton. You have Satisfied, and part of that song is rewind, rewind, and all the events that happen in the first act is replayed through a different vantage point. So I love that. We get to see the marriage, Charlotte's arrival from King George's perspective. And we learn immediately that he loves farming and he also is dealing with an health issue. They have consulted all manners of doctors and they have resorted to a man that other doctors say is a part of the madhouse. Ashley, one of the things that I thought was fascinating about this portrayal is, being a history buff and learning about this in school, we learned that King George III was known as Mad King George, right? I was surprised that they were going to show it this young. I guess I don't know how soon his symptoms started in real life, but I don't know if it was one of those things where maybe his madness started showing up sporadically in his youth and just got it did in real life get considerably worse as he got older to the point where he went blind and his family was relieved when he died because they felt like he was out of his misery. But
couldn't that have just been syphilis? Didn't people get blinded by
it was
syphilis?
not. It was not syphilis. And then I don't want to sound crass, but we are talking about the monarchy and their blue blood obsession.
Yeah, that's true.
It's called
Incest.
incest. So who knows what the madness was pretty much based out of. But
in this case, it's the pressure. That's what I think.
You think so?
That's how I interpreted it. In this case,
Interesting.
I took it as, even as a child, as a small child, as a baby, when he gives that whole spiel about when I was a baby, I had colic, but it wasn't just colic. It was the ruin of the monarchy. When I was a
Yes.
child and I did this, it wasn't just that. It was the ruin of the monarchy. I think he lived under such an intense pressure and microscope. And you think about how much we deal with anxiety and
Right.
depression and stress and all of that these days. And it's just become much more of a hot topic, really, since COVID. And imagine what that must have been like for him with the weight of the English crown on his shoulders. That's why I
Right.
was telling you before we got started. That's the hardest thing for me about this series, is because I feel like he had mental health issues that today will be able to be addressed through like therapy and medication. So seeing
Yes.
him through 2023 lens is heartbreaking to think that had he been born now, he would have been okay. He would have made it, because I do think that as a ruler, he would have been great had he been able to battle his mental health.
I
So
think it helped humble him too. He talks about, resorting to astrology, but guess what? Knowing that you're not perfect and you don't know when these attacks may happen, that'll
I think that was
humble
a
you.
product of his personality a little bit too, where he was like, you know, I have to find my little things. I have to find my things that
Yes.
help me to remember that I am a small piece of the pie of life. Because
Right.
everybody serves me and everybody services me and everything is about me. And I have to remember that life is not ultimately about me. I took that as being more of a product of his personality, not just the mental health issues. But again, that's what got to me about the series. I was like, George, let me just pull you through the TV and we gonna get you some help. But like when he broke down in the cab, not the cabin, but his what do you call it? The thing they rode on, the carriage.
Yes.
And I was like, George, like you are killing me. You are
Yeah.
killing me. You are killing me. This is anxiety. This is a panic attack, essentially.
And this is the elephant in the room. Like, this is the reason why he was not around Charlotte in the beginning, because he felt like being away from her was the best thing to do and to keep her safe.
This was a lesson for me in grace,
Mm,
because you don't always know what people are going through. Like I said, I was so frustrated those first 3 episodes, only seeing Charlotte's perspective. When I
yes,
finally saw his perspective, I was like, this is why you have to give people grace, because you just never know. You never know. Poor George was going through it.
going through it. One of my favorite 4 agreements: don't take anything personally and don't make any assumptions, because you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what they're thinking. What I did like about this episode is that his attraction for her and endearment for her was real. That breakfast scene when he was eating that awful porridge. Again, his doctor, I feel like, was definitely getting his ego stroked by having the King of England under his paw.
I feel like he was getting his rocks off too. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had a love-hate
Absolutely.
relationship with that doctor, because I was like, on the one hand, George asked for this. He asked for the most
Right.
experimental of experimental. So I understand you're doing your due diligence, whatever. But at the same time, this is torture.
Absolutely. And so his affections were real, and he talks about her being almost as mad as he was. I'm like, first of all, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that language, but yes. Um, but they are a perfect match. But what I loved was he was the one that picked the doggy, because I was really concerned that this gesture that Brimsley encouraged Reynolds to do was just them acting on behalf of, their monarch. But he actually did steal that dog for her, and I thought that was adorable.
He didn't steal it. He liberated that dog. That
He
dog was,
liberated.
who knows what he
Exactly.
was doing to that dog, or
True.
what plans that doctor had for that dog.
So true. George is able to dismiss the doctor because he's feeling good. But unfortunately, overhearing these conversations, Queen Charlotte was confronting Princess Augusta about the lie of omission. The princess says the king is not mad, he is stressed to bear the cares of a nation on his shoulder. And George heard that and he went straight back to the doctor. Man, this was difficult. Let's talk about Princess Augusta, shall we? She is a complex character. Okay. Shout out to Mama Stark. Okay. Because I really want to hate her. She has done things that I feel gladly to mark under hate. One, she lied to Charlotte, right? That's number one, really. Number two, she told the painter to make her lighter. Three, she reviewed her like a freaking mare, a horse when she showed up to marry her son. But then you can tell that she is bred from the antics employees of a court, right? The king said this when everybody knows it's her running the show. Everybody knows it. But then her relationship with like Agatha was interesting. She gave her ear, and whenever she was bested, she was formidable. Like, she gave what she said she was going to give, right? The title, the land, the access. Later in the series, when Agatha was crying over whether or not her son was going to keep the title, because again, Princess Agatha was dangling that carrot over her head. One thing Lady Danbury did that we thought she would never do, she burst out in tears, and she was like, sis, take a shot. Let's do this again. We do not quit. We endure.
I loved that scene.
Ashley, what are your thoughts?
So to your point, there is a lot to hate. I did not know when the series started how I was going to feel about her, because she felt like a puppet master that was pulling George's strings. I was wondering if a lot of his mental health had to do with the pressure she herself had put on him. Yes. And their dynamic and their relationship. But to your point, that conversation between Agatha and her was illuminating, especially about what she went through after her husband died and she had to deal with the king, who had been her husband's father, and how abusive he was towards her, to George, and all of that, and how she had to endure all of that. Again, you never know what people have gone through. And I think one of the things that I respected about her is that even though she was getting pressure from the court and from others to fold on issues of race and on issues of progress and things like that, she did not. She withstood the decisions and gave opportunity where others would have shut it down. And so for those reasons, I appreciated her character. And there was even a moment where she finally acknowledged how vital and how beautiful Charlotte had been to George and for George.
Yes.
In their dynamic. And when she gave that respect, I was like, oh, okay, we good. Like, that was the last thing I needed to be okay with you. She's a woman in a certain era of time, holding her own. So you have to give it to her for that.
So true. Episode 5, Gardens in Bloom. We get a little bit more play of present day here. A lot of Lady Bridgerton and Lady Danbury observing the Queen, discussing that the Queen must be the loneliest person in England. They even speculated whether or not she's ever been bedded.
She got 13 kids.
By someone outside of the king.
Okay, I was about to say, I don't remember this. Okay. Yeah, they at this point, after all these years, because it's now known that George has lost his mind and all of those things. I don't want to say I felt sad for Charlotte, but I did feel sad for Charlotte. Like, I want her to find, I don't think she ever felt out of love with George. And maybe that's the thing. It's like she still is in love with him, even though he's not there. Like, he's physically there, but he's not there.
Right.
I would have loved for them to give her a lover, but I don't think she would have taken it. Like, I don't think so she would have stepped out on him until he passed away. So
exactly.
It did make me sad.
And in real life, they were known to be some of the most faithful monarch couples like ever, which was rare because a lot of people take advantage of the access that they have with that type of power.
I just see the heads coming out of the water and coming to America. Remember they just popped out the water?
As a child, I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
As an adult, I'm like, oh, okay, good morning.
Yep. Yep.
Violet's garden is in bloom. She is what we call heated. Thinking about Beyonce.
That was so funny. I was like, y'all are so sweet. Talking about your garden is in bloom.
Yeah.
How quaint.
How quaint. Oh my goodness. She said that she even considered having a footman lie on top of her.
Reminded me of an episode of Sex in the City where Carrie went to California and Mr. Big had moved out to California, and she was like, I just need the weight of a man on top of me.
Oh man. We also finally get the present day Queen Charlotte's interpretation of love. She says love is determination, is a choice you make. You don't give yourself any other options. So that's to answer the lover conversation, right? And she says life as a royal is lonely, and you love hard because if you don't, you are lost. And this is her finally getting her sons to marry some young ladies. I just love in this series as a whole these interpretations of love. Love is such, it can mean so many things to so many people, right?
Yep.
You know, everything from duty to the feels to being determined. I also love the conversation of womanhood. And one of the most important quotes, and I don't believe is in this episode, it might be in the next, but it's like, we spend all of our time trying to get young women to marry, but do they really understand what love is? Like, why don't we spend time talking about life for a lot of them in their widows, their widowdom, you know what I mean? And like, they're still alive. What's next for them? What did you think about their conversation and highlighting women over a certain age?
We're getting older, right? So yes. The older we
get, it's better than the alternative.
Exactly. The older we get, the more relatable that becomes, because you don't, I mean, not that I didn't always appreciate it, but I think you come to appreciate things more the closer you get to it with your own life and your own experiences and things like that. So I loved it because I do agree that the versions of Bridgerton we've seen thus far have focused on the young lovers, you know. Right. And so the older women in the series are so compelling and so complex and so dynamic. And I have been more curious to learn more about them. So give me more. If y'all want to do a series with the trio, I will watch. I'll be down for it.
Is Mama Bridgerton about to get a boo? Because that does not happen in the books, but
she should.
She should.
She should get her a boo. If her garden is in bloom and she wants to water it ferociously or whatever.
She said it wants air. It wants to be touched. I was like, sis, okay.
Live your life, Lady Bridgerton. Live your life.
Let's go back into the past. Lady Danbury is mourning the death of her husband. This is something that seemingly took her off guard, considering she was glad that he was gone. But when you think about how she was groomed for him, girl.
Since the age of 3, that was wild.
She doesn't even know her favorite color of food because it was based off of his preference. She said, I am new. I appreciated this discussion because I know what it's like to like finally be free of something. And you're like, what do I do now? Like you always like dream of it, but once you actually obtain it, it's like, huh? Mm-hmm. Like, who am I? Who am I in this space? Because we're ever evolving, we're ever changing. The only thing constant in life is change, right?
Mm-hmm. It was a rebirth for her. And so I was excited for her to figure out what's next and what the next chapter of her life could look like. I am fundamentally behind women living their best lives. So whatever that looks like for you,
period.
I want that for you. And to be someone who was never able to become your own person in any shape or form, and you totally lived for the pleasure of your spouse. She was a newborn baby in this world. Live your best life.
But I'm glad that she knew herself to know, like, he was an ass. He was not someone to be endeared to because he was not a good person. So I'm glad that she had enough self-awareness. Because I mean, I don't know what I would do if I was brainwashed at such a young age. Like, where's your individuality?
Women. I was telling my mom this the other day. I say people always talk about the good old days. I was like, as a Black woman, there are no good old days for me.
First of all,
there are
first of all, the fact the actress who played Max in Being Single,
Erica
Alexander, thank you. Her husband, her ex-husband and her have like this comic book and it's about the future and they were trying to make it into a movie. This is like early 90s, early 2000s. And the producers essentially like laughed them out of the office. And they were like, Black people are always in the future. We always look to the future because there has never been that conversation of, oh, what decade or what time in history would you want to live in? There's no part in history that I'm like actively looking towards. I'm looking towards the future where I am free in all areas without discrimination. Okay.
There we go.
So it's like Black people being in sci-fi should not be a surprising thing.
Yeah, but the problem is you have the racist people of today who don't ever want to see that future. That's what the problem is.
And apparently they don't want to see us as mythical creatures as well. I digress. All right. Lady Danbury starts rambling along with Lord Ledger. He makes her a birthday hat. And they do more rambling in her bed. Okay. Shout out to her. I mean, we do not condone adultery.
In this case, fuck his wife. Yes, I do.
In real life.
You ain't want Black people on the court. You can kick rocks, ma'am. And your husband slept with a Black woman. That is poetic justice.
Period. And it's like, and I'm happy for her because I'm like, she finally understood what orgasms were. I'm like, shout out to you, sis.
Or at least the start, because I'm sure there's plenty for her to learn. But yes.
I'm just being honest. The fact that she didn't know there was pleasure in the act is just devastating.
Yeah, well, even when she showed the queen, she was like, maybe if you do it with somebody you like, it's better. I wouldn't know. So
heartbreaking. Shout out to her handmaiden too, Carol. She was a real one. I loved her.
She was.
Queen Charlotte is pregnant. She is being poked and prodded, and her mother-in-law is moving in. Lord Jesus, I was not happy for her. She writes George while he gets poked and prodded. It's a dark time. Charlotte is just depressed and sad because she's lonely and she has been bamboozled into this family. She's so sad. She writes to her brother. Her brother comes to visit her because she tells him she wants to go home. Of course, he's like, you can't do that. You're the Queen of England. She run away to Lady Danbury's house. And Lady Danbury is like, this is cute and all, but this is treason. I am not kidnapping the future heir of this monarchy.
Right.
Again, her conversation with Lady Danbury gave her the push that she needed to be the queen that she is. She found George, got him out of that dungeon. She told that crazy doctor, she's like, I don't care for his sanity. I care for his happiness and his soul. Let him be mad.
If that's what he needs. He would have been decapitated. I would have killed him, probably.
The beauty in her love for him, in like true acceptance, I think that was some of the most touching aspects of their relationship.
Absolutely, because his mother was willing to put him through the ringer. So thank God he had a wife who was like, listen, what you're not going to do is torture my husband in the dungeon for the rest of his life. Let him be mad. Poor thing. That was horrible to sit through. Horrible. I hated that doctor by the end. Hated.
Episode 6, Crown Jewels. A lot happens in this final episode, Ashley. Let's start on a lighter front. There's an end to rambling. Lord Ledger decides to invite his daughter to ramble with him. Did he do it for her or for himself?
For himself, but why we gotta be one and done? We can't just play a little bit longer. That's what I was thinking.
Exactly.
That was so short.
So short. George is out, but he still doesn't want anything to do with Charlotte right now. And this was heartbreaking. He's recovering from the traumatic experiences he was going through. And she told him, I will stay. And he keeps telling her to go. And she has this realization that perhaps he was away because he actually loved her, because at this point she was depressed. She felt like a failure. And the iconic lines, she's like, do you love me? Because I love you. Do you love me? I will stand between the heavens and the earth. Do you love me? And then his part, he's like, I love you. From the moment I saw you climbing that wall, he's like, I love you desperately. I cannot breathe when you're not here. My heart called your name, Ashley. Bravo. Bravo to the women who wrote this, because the way I was melted on this floor, I was like, what is happening? It's too much. It's so beautiful.
Real life men don't stand a chance.
She was like, I don't care if you're mad.
Shout out to the writer's strike. Pay them people. Because clearly,
it's deserved.
Clearly, y'all write lines that have women in shambles.
Shambles, Ashley. Utter shambles. Things are going well. And then George gets noticed that he should address Parliament, because guess what? He's still King of England after all. I think this confrontation between Queen Charlotte and his mother was really interesting, because she did put her mother-in-law in place, but I did think it was valid that Princess Augusta was like, you can't baby him. Essentially, he still is king. He still has to come out. You know, you can fortify him, but at the end of the day, you got to let him do his job. And I felt like it was valid advice to give to Charlotte, but I also felt like, aren't you calling the kettle black? Because I feel like she's pacified him the entire series.
Yeah, but I think what she's saying, though, is there was always the thought that he still has a duty, and you can't let him just go away forever and neglect his duties, because then he'll no longer be the king. And that's obviously valid. At this point, though, I was like, just let Charlotte rule the country. Like,
exactly.
Charlotte could have went and did that Parliament address easy.
That part. Ultimately, he did not do the speech. Queen Charlotte found him underneath the bed where the heavens could not find him. Ooh, that was rough. I didn't think he was going to be able to do it. Did you have faith in him?
It wasn't looking good. As Renault said, he has good days and he has bad days. As soon as his hand starts shaking, it's a bad day.
Well, after all this, they had a baby in the midst of all this. I love, again, their love and how supportive he was, because back in the day, birthing was women's business. Again, all the lies when Lady Danbury and Queen Charlotte was having the conversation of like, will it hurt? Oh, it's the worst pain ever. Really? Oh no, it'll be great. It'll be fine. Lies. Farmer
George came in handy though. He was like, listen, I know how to deal with a breech birth.
That's right. They have a ball. It's almost a sad realization of like, yes, this element of you, this chronic sickness, but we will get through it together, you and me. And they socialize, they dance, they look beautiful. It was a triumphant moment. You have any thoughts on their ball, Ashley?
I'm glad that, again, she was able to help him navigate and figure out a way through the issue that he was having in terms of, you know, showing his strength and showing who he was and that he was still king and all those things, but doing it in a loving way. And again, this is when the queen shows her that respect and says, you got it. He's happy with you. Thank you. And
absolutely,
I appreciated it.
Lady Danbury is propositioned by Queen Charlotte's brother for marriage. She was waiting the option, and she ultimately decided to say no. I love the part where it says, switch your fear with your faith. That's part of the conversation that Lady Danbury had with Queen Charlotte on, one, saying no to her brother, but then two, having faith in her to handle the title situation. Do you think that was the best decision for Agatha?
Yes.
I agree.
Clearly it was the best. I knew he lost her when he was talking about he wanted more kids. I was like, she ain't having no more kids, bro. It's like Pete Davidson and Kim Kardashian. You're barking up the wrong tree, baby.
And marriage at that time is so much different than marriage today. It's like you're going to be essentially possessed by someone else.
Mm-hmm. And leaving everything, talking about, oh, we can come back every few years. Not every year, every few years.
New language, new customs you have to get acquainted by. That's a lot.
And I was like, he's a cutie. He'd definitely be an upgrade on the husband.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. I'm sure you would have a good time, but
hopefully he'll be able to locate essential parts. But yeah, of course.
Yes, but no. Even for you, boo, it's a no.
Going to present day, Queen Charlotte kids confronted her about this baby race. They said it was cruel. They told her that you don't know us. You have been our queen, not our mother. I want to take a little bit of time on this because what happened in the years between this young, audacious Queen Charlotte to the Queen Charlotte we get to know who birthed 15 children, but 13 of them are alive and they feel so disconnected to their mother.
Life and the loyalty and love for George. I mean, that's her number one. That's probably all that, she has the energy emotionally
bandwidth
to have to deal with. I mean, that's just the way I saw it. Not a great excuse in terms of her children, because they needed her. They needed her, but she's a human being and she has dealt with a lot, and she had to shoulder not just her husband's sickness, but also the crown as a result of it. So give her a little grace.
Wow. But after all of her antics, she has a grandbaby on the way, and she finds George, tells him the good news, and she goes to their spot underneath that freaking bed, Ashley.
Hope they kept it clean under there.
He said, you did not go over the wall. And when they shot it to where you had the present day mixed in with the young ones, puddles of tears. Aww. Ashley. So touching, so beautiful, because that's how they see each other.
Yes. Gorgeous. Love is still there.
Final thoughts on Queen Charlotte.
Ooh, it was emotional roller coaster both times I watched it. Watching it the second time, though, at least I didn't have that same level of like just utter frustration, not understanding what was going on with George as I did the first time. But like I said, it's my favorite of the Bridgerton series so far. Very deep. I don't know how they're going to top this. I literally saw them teasing the next season of regular Bridgerton 3 with Penelope and Colin, and I'm like,
Penelope upgrade is amazing though. She's always gorgeous. But them. Yeah.
I saw the steals and I'm like, I see y'all trying, but this is about to be the most vanilla ass season of Bridgerton ever. Okay.
I cannot.
So I'm not thinking it's gonna top Queen Charlotte, but we'll see what happens, I guess. This gave me a newer appreciation. I'll say that for sure, because there's so much meat in this series. It's not just love and hot sex. This was deep.
Girl, listen.
Y'all did the thing. Y'all did the thing.
Period. I love this tidbit. So the CEO of Netflix is married to a Black woman, Nicole Event. She's the daughter of the Godfather of Hollywood. And this series is a love letter to his late mother-in-law, Jacqueline Event, who unfortunately was killed in a series of Hollywood burglaries a couple of years ago. And apparently Queen Charlotte was one of her favorite historical figures. And when Shonda Rhimes was working on Bridgerton season 2, he was like, consider telling the story. And that's what prompted this particular prequel or this particular story. So it's just gorgeous and it means so much. And I thought it was beautiful. So I highly recommend you all checking out. I'm currently on Nicole Evans official Instagram, and she has the whole explanation there. But I love the origins of this project as well.
Very beautiful.
And again, shout out to India. That girl can act. I mean, the fact that she not only made the role her own, but she was able to pull from Golda's Queen Charlotte as well. Fierce. And the chemistry, that's the one thing Shonda Rhimes has got down packed is chemistry.
Yeah, that's true.
They were like, Bridgerton season 1 and 2 chemistry is off the chart. And let's go back to freaking Scandal. That chemistry was hot. So
the series was flawless, my dear. Flawless.
On that note, time for hidden gems, Ashley.
All right, I have 2. First one, had seen it so many times, teased on Apple TV Plus. Finally clicked play, and I'm so glad I did. It is Silo, baby, based off a book series by Hugh Howey. In a ruined and toxic future, a community exists in a giant underground silo that plunges hundreds of stories deep. There, people live in a society full of regulations they believe are meant to protect them. This series stars Rebecca Ferguson, Rashida Jones, Common, David Oyelowo. It is so good. It's so good. I've almost tried to spoil it for myself a couple times and just Google like what the F is really good. Like what's going on. You know what's
funny? My girlfriend, one of my best friends, started the series and she recently downloaded the book, so she's reading the book right now just so she'll know what happened.
Because that's how I felt. I was like, I just need to know, because I have my theories, I have my suspicions, but I was getting to the point where I was like, I'm just about to start Googling because I want to know.
It? Is it a mystery? Is it drama?
It's a action? Drama. It's action. It's all the things. I mean, there's romance in it. It's all the things, but it's set in this future dystopian type of world, which we love. And but the mystery is, why are people in the silo? Because history was destroyed during a rebellion 100 years ago, and every attempt to find that history is suppressed or regulated. So it's just a mystery as to what's going on, and the whole thing is you can't go outside. If you say you want to go outside, you get sent outside and you die. So what's really good? It's, guys, I had binged it and now I'm to the point where I can only watch it weekly when the episodes drop. If you don't listen to any other hidden gems I've had in a while, watch Silo. That's how much I feel about this series.
Wow.
You have not listened to any other hidden gems I've given you in a while, watch Silo, Apple TV Plus.
Wow.
All right, my next hidden gem, based on a true story on Peacock. This is brand spanking new, pretty much, starring Kaylee Cuoco and Chris Messina. The description from IMDb is: a realtor, a former tennis star, and a plumber sees a unique opportunity to capitalize on America's obsession with true crime. It's interesting. I watched it, but I need to rewatch the last couple episodes because I was watching it during my ABFF time and I was exhausted. But it's such an interesting premise. They're starting a podcast. Okay. That's how they're delving into the true crime world. So, it's a interesting premise and tale. Great cast. Love Kaylee Cuoco, Chris Messina. So it's a mystery, but like, kind of a little slapsticky in there as well with comedy. So I recommend it. I haven't watched a lot from Peacock, but this was one that captured my interest. So that is based on a true story. Delora, what you got for the week?
Thank you, Ashley. I have 2 movies. Okay, so since we are talking about, a good drama period piece, which, I adore, I decided to recommend this hidden gem. It's Chevalier. It is based off of the real life extraordinary man, Frenchman. Here's the premise of the movie. The illegitimate son of an African slave and a French plantation owner, Joseph Polin, rises to improbable heights in French society as a celebrated violinist, composer, and fencer, complete with a love affair and falling out with Marie Antoinette. It is starring the talented Calvin Harris Jr. And it's also music by Chris Bowser, who also did the composition for Queen Charlotte. And he's my fave because I fell in love with him from Bridgerton season 1. It's really good. It's really good. Is it my favorite period piece of all time? It's not, but I think it's a fascinating story and it is definitely worth watching. And the music is phenomenal. So, highly recommend. It's available on Hulu now. You're welcome. My second hidden gem, it is absolutely not hidden because it's the number one movie in the world. It is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, rated PG. It is 2 hours and 16 minutes long. And when I was watching it, I was like, this is fucking phenomenal. Like,
I gotta see it.
The illustrations, it's visually gorgeous.
They had Kent Powers on Higher Learning talking about it, and as soon as they said spoiler alert, I was like, oh, turning you off.
Visually stunning. And honestly, there are some conversations about Blackness in this one and white allyship that is fire. And it makes so much sense. And it's great. We took David out for Father's Day to see this movie because this is a movie that he and Amara bonds over, even though I absolutely love the first one, but they've watched it more times
and
without
they did
me.
They did Halloween.
Yes, my daughter actually went into the theaters to go Spider.
Now you got to get her Issa's outfit.
I don't know. I don't want to put a pregnant belly on her.
Oh, she's pregnant in it? Okay,
yes.
Never mind. That's weird. Maybe that'll be your character.
Maybe. But shout out to Daniel Kaluuya's character because he was my favorite character. I'll just say that much.
Okay.
Check it out. Check it out. Check it out.
All right, guys. That's it for us. We're going to head on out of here, but we will be back with more headlines and hot topics and all the things. Be blessed. We appreciate y'all. Share this episode
so much
with a family, friend, coworker, whomever, somebody in the street. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time.
Love y'all. Bye.